Hey everyone, thank you for stopping by. It is always great to see you, and I hope you're having a fantastic week. Mine has been, let's just say, interesting. You ever had one of those weeks where things that you're used to using, tools, materials, everything you used to craft with, and it doesn't matter, it's like you've never used it before. I had so many problems doing some of the most simple things. It's just one of those weeks, and I get to go to jury duty next week. I'm sure that will be fun. So, in today's video, I turned myself into a Silent Hill nurse, more along the lines from Silent Hill 2, because you guys voted for it at 75% over the Bloody Nurse. I hope you like it. This is air dry clay that you can find easy at the craft stores. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Starting with the hat, I'm using craft foam paper, and I take masking tape and start bending it into a shape that I like. Once I have that, where there's a small pocket that will fit over the base and the crown of the head, I go through and I glue each side. I am using a hot glue gun, and once I have those edges into place, I remove the tape. In order to make this hat look a little bit more Silent Hill nurse-like, I went through and simply cut some small strips of the same foam paper, and I got some shapes that I like to make stitches. Once I have my stitches glued into place, I go through with my glue gun, and on the edge of each stitch I create a small little ball of glue. And what I did for this look, when I colored it, I made it dingy with coffee, but I took a little bit of gray and I highlighted the markings of these stitches by placing a little bit of gray on the edges up underneath to give it more dimension. To keep the hat open at the bottom where it takes the shape, I simply just place it on top of a cup for several days. For the shirt, since I did not purchase a nurse's outfit, I went to Ollie's and got a uniform shirt, which they have a lot of styles and colors. This one came at $1.55, and I'm using my homemade what I call liquid dirt, which is a mixture of red and green to give me a dingy brown. And for the skirt of the nurse's outfit, because the shirt was not long enough, you can take coffee and brush that on to give it a stain and also clean up your workspace at the same time. For my prop, I am using gelatin onto a butcher knife, and a gelatin is glycerin, water, and gelatin at a 1-to-1 ratio. A cup like this requires about 2 tablespoons of each, so if that's the amount that you need, it would be 2 tablespoons of gelatin, 2 tablespoons of glycerin, and 2 tablespoons of water. You want to pop this in the microwave for about 6 seconds at a time to get the texture that you like. And mine's older with clotted blood, so I didn't let mine sit for too long in the microwave. I didn't want it very runny. I wanted to be able to control it. But do be mindful if you're using props like this that you need to make sure that you are very safe, and in order to help you make that sharp edge a little less blunt and razor-like, place that gelatin over the very edge of it. It's just something that's a little bit more safe. And also, if you want a darker blood and you need that to come through into your look, dark blood comes with clots, and in order to achieve that darker look, add a little bit of blue to your red food coloring and let that food coloring be liquid and not the food coloring gel. For my mask, I'm using air dry clay, and after I get a section cut from the main portion, I place a small layer of corn starch onto my board and also onto my rolling pin so that nothing sticks. And with clay, one of the biggest things is to make sure that your edges for something like a mask is not thin, because they will dry first and crack. On my head cast, I placed spacers for the eyes, and I changed the structure of the nose with aluminum foil, and I went through and I put plastic on the outside so it will release later. If you have any cracks, you can go through with some watered down clay and brush those over. Now here I am taking my X-Acto knife and cutting the eyes out for this look. With the back of a brush, I'm scoring in a basic shape that I'm going to use for this look. It's the most iconic look for the nurses of Silent Hill. And I go through and just make that a little bit deeper, making sure not to cut into the clay itself. And to smooth clay, whether you're using air foam or air dry, a little bit of water in your fingertip will help you smooth out edges or those places where you might have bump into it with your tools. A good technique that I like to use to put texture into clay is putting a piece of plastic over it and using a tool to mark it lightly. This is up to you. This is the textures that you want to play around with. I'm using at first, you see, simply a toothbrush, and I like to go back in and use the same plastic as long as I can still see through it. And I took some more tools and made some of the indentions and textures a little bit deeper for dimension for this look. Instead of the tools I'm using, you can also take toothpicks and do this. You can tape toothpicks together to have a larger area to work with. Now, taking some strips, I go through and I lay those into the score that I did earlier, and with my finger on the outside so it looks like it's part of the mask, I go through and I smooth that out with some water in my finger. To add depth to this side of the face, I am building up the small details with little pieces of clay. In order for the edges of this mask not to dry out more quickly than the rest of the clay, I take a damp paper towel and I wrap it. And I continue to go through and smooth out any areas that I want to be blended into this mask. And again, with the plastic, I go in and score some more details into this mask. I like to let my mask dry for about 3 to 4 days, and I cover it with a plastic bag so that it dries more evenly. For my base color, I wanted more of that bone look like it has in the movie, and I took yellow acrylic with white and black water-based paints, and I watered it down even more because I wanted a wash of color. And for the brown, I used alcohol paints with my Skin Illustrator FX Onset palette for skin tones. Be mindful that when you are putting any color onto this, it's still very porous because it is dried and it's not sealed, that the color will get about a shade or maybe 2 darker. So I would test this out on some dry clay if you're really concerned about the coloring. But I go through and I wash this all over for the base. I mix black and white with water to go in with details. I like to work where I build details out slowly so that I can see where the dimension is and where I need to put the darker shadows. So anything that's in these smaller portions and up underneath, I continue to work between gray and black to get that added dimension. And I go through and do a wash over the scarring or the other details that I put into this, and you can see that once I place the color into it, I'm able to wash it with a bit of color and tap it away, and it will sink into those creases and the details. And I just continue to go back and forth until I get the degree of darkness in the shadows that I like. I do the same thing with the alcohol paints, bringing that to be brown is my highlight compared to the dark grays and blacks in the background, and I like to incorporate every color that I use in the concentrated small areas of the shadows. One thing that's great about creating this Silent Hill nurse is that you don't have to have a face cast. You can take a plastic Halloween mask and sculpt over it or a mannequin head. There are so many different ways to actually achieve this look, but I wanted to be able to hang this on my wall in my videos for later, so I picked clay to do it, and I didn't see many people doing a clay mask, and I wanted to stay away from the Plastigauss strip. You want to seal those colors in after it dries, and I used hairspray for this because I wanted a slight sheen and not a high gloss look to it. A big thank you to everyone that voted for this look. I absolutely had so much fun creating this for you guys. Please tag me in your looks, and if you'd like to find me on Instagram and Twitter, those links are below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.